What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Matt and Alex show. Only one of us is here to represent because only one of us has
Oh boy.
got to represent for my boy. About to get re-signed. They wrote me
Yeah,
up.
resigned is right.
Yeah, I mean, a little tongue twisted, but we'll see. He's gonna be back in the Seahawks uniform. You'll learn that more about as we go. But we got a Packers fan, a Seahawks fan. We're gonna be talking about a lot of different stuff. We're gonna talk about some football. We're gonna talk mostly about fantasy though. But just to give you a little highlight, only one of us was in the championship last year, actually in two different leagues. Uh, yeah, I didn't win, unfortunately, but I
Right.
was in the championship. I don't think you even made the playoffs in one of the leagues, right? You did.
No, I did. I made the playoffs in one of the leagues. But my goal was to tank. I'm ready for next year.
Looking
Speaking
forward
of
to Bijan.
rookies, yeah. Yeah, looking forward to Bijan.
Yeah, I mean, but you were saying the other day you might not even go Bijan. You're thinking what, Bryce Young possibly? Yeah, no.
We might get that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see. So we have a good little schedule going on. We're gonna, like I said, talk a little bit about fantasy. We had a big thing going on recently, the Senior Bowl. A lot of young
Yes,
prospects
sir.
had the opportunity to come out and just showcase their talent. You know, a lot of names that you never really heard before if you're not a big fan of the programs. I know a couple that I hadn't heard before, but getting to be able to see them in person, because I was actually able to be in person, which we'll have some really cool videos being released for you guys soon to where you'll be actually
Absolutely.
be able to see some of those one-on-ones. And then we actually even got like some 7-on-7. So we have some really cool stuff from like some really cool prospects. But just to dive right into the Senior Bowl, we are going to give you some of our biggest risers that we think we had come out of the Senior Bowl, and just some of our overall biggest surprises and people that we think just have a lot going for them coming into like your dynasty draft. So these aren't any players that are likely, really, you're probably never going to take in your first round, unless you're crazy. But these could be players that could sneak into like the second round, maybe mid to second round, or definitely like even like some third round or later. And those are the dimes. That's how you really win in your dynasty leagues. Is everyone says there's no talent after the second round, which is kind of true. It's
Can often be true.
it is a lot harder, but when you win your leagues, it's because you're usually killing it in your rookie drafts. At least, like I like to think so. It's usually when in the leagues I'm doing, I'm killing it in my rookie drafts. I just had a league where I drafted Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, and I was able to get Chris Olave just because you let talent fall to you. You know, don't
Mhm.
reach for certain positions. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about in the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to dive right in for some of like my 2 to 3 favorite players. Well, depending on the time. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. But first one is Tajay Spears. Now, this is a guy that you're going to hear a lot about just coming in and out of drafts
Everywhere. Everywhere.
everywhere. Like people have been talking about him. Like I watched a video the other day of Todd McShay, just kind of glaring up. So this one is not a hot take whatsoever, but just being for
Let's put it this way, real quick. I spent most of while you were actually at the Senior Bowl, which to me is tampering, unfair advantage. Um, while you were actually at the Senior Bowl, I was in a tree stand and I was still getting notifications about Tajay Spears. I mean,
yeah,
I'm in a tree stand in the middle of Alabama in the woods, and I'm still hearing about him from cousins and getting notifications on my phone. So this dude is seems to be legit so far.
yeah. No, he is. He just I think he shocked a lot of people coming from a small school like Tulane, who's really it's mostly known for its academics. Let's be honest. I think they have a good baseball team, but I don't really know much about the basketball team. But they're not really good for known for their athletics. But Tulane, their football team, I watched them a couple times this year. So for those of you that don't know, you'll learn more as the episodes come along. I actually do get the chance to watch on the sidelines sometimes where I'm getting a firsthand look at these players. Because I am a sound engineer. So I'm working right there on the sidelines. Catch me on your TVs next time. You might see me working that boom pole. But I get to watch these players, and I've stood next to Bryce Young, like I've seen Tulane play multiple times. And there's also a couple other guys that we'll maybe get to in future videos that I've seen that I really like coming into like your dynasty drafts. But back to Tajay, one of the things that really just stood out was his explosiveness, like in 7-on really well, and also in 7-on-7s, whenever he's, his release from running routes, he's shown, and we were talking about this actually a little bit before air, that he didn't have a lot of production receiving in college, but watching him, it didn't seem like he was incapable of it. It seems like he
Right.
was very fluid right runner, like I said, very explosive, not bad off of his release, and was able to get some separation with some of these linebackers that were lining up on 7-on-7. But even on the scrimmages where it's, full on pads and these guys are hitting, he had some really explosive plays. And there was one play that specifically made its rounds on Twitter and all the social media. And I'm sure we'll also, like I said, we'll have some of these videos that we'll release here too, to where you can just kind of see another different angle of just the explosiveness, where this guy is 5'9", 5'9", 205, that he checked in at
solid.
Very solid. Somewhere where you feel like he has enough build to where he can take a load, but enough to where he's probably just going to be that compliment back, but I think, like I said, combine means a
Yeah,
lot.
I don't think you want him every single down, but I mean, dude is going to be effective anytime that he's on the field getting the ball in his hands.
But I mean, hey, I was looking at this the other day, actually. Maybe he's a Maurice Jones-Drew. Maurice Jones-Drew was 5'7", 215. If he comes in at the combine and is 5'9", and he stays at 205, maybe even like 208 to 210, that's like, oh man, when we were talking about it, like, especially if he runs a high 40, his stock is just going to continue to raise. Like,
Oh
and
yeah,
this is somebody like I specifically mentioned, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, and they may be dreaming, but as a Seahawks fan, I would love this kid. I think he's somebody for like Pete Carroll that loves to run that rock. It would be perfect, because Ken Walker, as much as I love him, and I do have him in a couple leagues, but he got a little banged up towards the end of the year, and that's just the nature of the game with running backs. It's very hard to find a guy that's going to be on 16 games. So, maybe as a complimentary back,
17.
17 game. Yes. Thank you. Maybe as a complimentary back there, but also who knows? I mean, if he goes to somewhere like the Bills, cause they took James Cook last year, they like that type of back clearly, and they have Devin Singletary. Who knows? Maybe he becomes the guy there. But to kind of just a little bit one more thing that I did want to say is that he was also like a very strong runner, and a kind of little negative to him that is something that a lot of people like to take into account. I'm iffy on this sometimes, because I was a big fan of Jamison Williams last year, and he was very similar, where he didn't really break out until his senior year. But when he broke out, I like the little, yeah.
I accidentally hit the button. I was like, "Oh shit!"
For the viewers at home watching, there you go. Got a little visual gag. But no, but he wasn't really a true breakout starter until his senior year at Tulane. But when he did break out, man, did he break out. He had 21 total touchdowns, receiving and rushing, 19 rushing. And then he also ran for over 1,600 yards. So, like, clearly,
Nasty,
yeah, this
nasty.
kid, when he broke out, he broke out. So, like, I don't
He's
know.
no
I like
Matt Forte. Shout out to Tulane. He's no Matt Forte. He's not going to go out and catch you, probably 50 plus balls a year. But I mean, he definitely is capable.
Yeah. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on him. Like, I'm sure you guys have heard it all from people that are been doing this for a lot longer than we have. But keep your eye out on Tajay Spears. This is a kid that I
Yeah.
really. So
I,
my
I think he's really easy to talk about. You know what I mean? Like he came out to the Senior Bowl and he really did put on a show.
Oh, he did. Yeah, especially because he was one of those names where you kind of you knew him, but you may or may not have known him, but you know him now. Like, everyone knows
Right.
him. Uh,
Absolutely.
But so to kind of go on to my next one, is it's a little bit more of just a general topic, honestly, just because I really like this overall class from top to bottom of tight ends. Like obviously, we'll get into a little bit more
The
positional rank.
Michael Mayers and your boy from Georgia.
Darnell Washington, love him.
Yeah, there
Another
you go.
guy I would absolutely love if the Seahawks got, or even like, I mean, you see the Saints posted behind me. I wouldn't mind it as a Saints fan either. Uh, but
Can y'all tell he's a homer?
yeah, I mean, I am. I'm from New Orleans. No judging, but like, if anyone knows about Saints history, the Aints, that was a rough time in sports history for us. So I grew up a Seahawk fan. Kill me. Don't kill me. Actually, that was a joke. A little bit of dark humor. But uh, no. So getting back to topic, to the tight ends. Like I said, it's a very overall strong class. We'll get a little bit more about positional rankings on who is your actual top 5, top 10. But some of the guys, most of them, like your top ones, your Michael Mayers, your Darnell Washingtons. There's another I'm blanking on right now that was Dalton Kincaid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. He was not. Neither one of them were present for the Senior Bowl, but they still had a lot of people show up. So Davis Allen from Clemson, Sam Laporta from Iowa State. No, I'm sorry, from Iowa, and then Lucas Musgrave, which a big one for me is actually like a lot of people's top 5, and he's kind of creeped in there for me as well. Just really big guy, 6'6", 250, and moved very well for that size. Like I don't really have a comp for him. That's a hard thing to say because after only watching from the Senior Bowl, I need to watch a little bit more game film. But I really liked him, and overall, like also like there's Payne Durham from Purdue, and then Will Mallory from Miami. Every one of these guys made plays. Like you could see them, they were high pointing the ball. They were really sturdy blockers, holding off like what I consider not a great group of pass rushers, but a solid group of pass rushers, probably better as like interior rushers with like your Jalen Carters. And then we also have like your Will Anderson, who I think is a great run stuffer as well as a pass rusher. Very,
Elite all around.
yeah, very shades of like maybe some Von Miller. But I really like this entire class, man. I mean, like Davis Allen is 6'6", played at Clemson, so he obviously played at an elite program. Sam Laporta, 6'4", Lucas Musgrave, like I said, 6'6", Payne Durham, 6'5", 255, Will Mallory. I don't have his height and weight down, but I mean, the point is all these guys are big dudes and they moved. So I
Yeah.
really like this class overall, and I actually am a guy in one of my rebuilding leagues. I have Kyle Pitts, but I also have Schmevin Schmingram stealing that from the fantasy footballers, who's just really a headache. But I mean, I also do have Gerald Everett, who may be getting cut, is a likely casualty for the Chargers this year. So the point is, I'm looking at possibly adding a tight end, just to kind of have a little bit more depth because Kyle Pitts, unfortunately, was very much also a headache this year. But hopefully that gets better and the Falcons are able to get a quarterback. But yeah, so I mean, that's really my 2 guys. And one other guy that I want to mention, but this one's going to be very quickly, and then you can go ahead and get your guys in, Alex, is Jonathan Mingo. So Jonathan Mingo, Ole Miss, immediately not in a talent wise, I don't want any of the audience to get this misconstrued, but just he reminded me of AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, but not as good, or not as refined, but a very big and athletic dude. He's 6'6", I mean, not 6'6". He's 6'2", 225, but he moved, and
Like
this
a
was,
Treylon Burks.
yeah, like, and maybe a Treylon Burks is a good example, a better example. But like he can move, man, and like he wasn't. He just was. I think he could separate a little bit better than Treylon could coming out because there's a couple
Yeah.
videos that you guys will be able to see that will release shortly, where you'll just watch him be strong with the ball, fighting off of coverage, but also on a fade route, looking very quick off of his release and just coming and high pointing the ball, stuff that you could easily see him doing and just knowing his athletic ability and knowing how to take advantage of it. But like I said, he is very raw. He needs to refine his route running a lot because it seems very limited from what I saw at the Senior Bowl. But that's another guy who I just think the combine will see a little bit more. And I mean, it will either elevate his stock even more or it will hurt him a little bit. But those are my three favorite guys. And I know you have three guys as well that you really are like. You weren't at the Senior Bowl. You weren't as cool as I am, unfortunately. But
Listen, I was up in a tree stand in Alabama and shooting guns and drinking beers and riding four wheelers. So, granted, I would love to be at the Senior Bowl, but I had an absolute blast.
that sounds fun. I
Yeah,
mean, unless PETA is watching this, then they probably hate you.
sorry,
Um,
Peter.
but nah, who cares about PETA? Uh, I love animals. Just to get that out there. Just PETA is a little bit extreme. But go ahead, get out there. Go ahead, get yours.
All right, so a couple quick things that I wanted to hit. Yeah, this past year for fantasy wise was a little rough for me, but we're
Oh,
gonna bring it back. We're gonna
excuses.
bring it back. All right, it's a little rough, but we're gonna bring it back. All right.
Excuses.
So this is the thing. The Senior Bowl is a great place for guys to really just move their stock. Um, like you said, the guys that we're talking about are not going to be your day one prospects, may not even be day two, but like you said, I mean, that can make or break. We've seen elite guys come from those late day two or day three picks. So, we'll see
Christian
what we got.
Watson.
A couple guys say what?
Christian Watson's. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's a
No, no,
big
no, you're good.
just from last
Yeah.
year. You know,
Cooper Cup. I mean, yeah,
relatively unknown until he got to the Senior Bowl.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, it's fun to see, you know what I mean? Because there is evidence of these guys being able to make careers for themselves just based off of this. Obviously, they work their asses off to get to that point, and it's not to go without saying that. But man, it's fun to see them go from being relatively unknown, small school guys to all of a sudden being on that NFL tier. So, with that said, a couple guys that I wanted to hit. My number one that I wanted to hit was Evan Hull, running back out of Northwestern, brother. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. So we talk about solid. I know he's not as compact as your boy's 5'9", you said, right?
Yeah,
But man, I mean, he has the versatility. He wasn't, he man, white or a white running back kind of always makes you want to go back to like a Christian McCaffrey. And the thing is, he is kind of Christian McCaffrey light. He's probably a little slower, but he's more of a bruiser. But he has the versatility. In 2021, he had 1,009 rushing yards. He had 264 receiving yards, but had 9 total touchdowns. And then in 2022, he dipped a little bit in the rushing. He went to 913 rushing yards, but he had 55 catches for 546 yards with 7 total touchdowns. Um, I don't think anybody's going to say that we've got elite talent around him everywhere at Northwestern. So for him to be one of the focal points and still produce, actually, he went to Ohio State and actually put up, I believe it was 30 rushes for like 122 yards. So,
really. He
yeah.
was in
So
Ohio. He
he's
started out at Ohio State. When he transferred like last year or something. I didn't know that.
yeah. So, hold on one second. Where I lost my note. Yeah, so when he played Ohio State last year, against Ohio State last year, yeah, 30 rushes,
Oh, okay.
122 yards against them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, did he have elite production overall over the last couple of years? No, but you saw the versatility. And when we talk about a guy who can come in and be the guy who can spell a starting running back, like the Seahawks with Kenneth Walker, that's the type of back that I think that they want to see. Somebody who can come out of the backfield and be able to catch passes as well as rush the ball pretty heavily as well. He looked explosive when you saw him on Saturday. I watched the highlights for it. He broke off a 24-yard gain and looked great doing it. Overall, he ran 10 rushes for 74 yards and he caught a couple of passes, but he was actually one of 3 backs to put up 500 rushing and receiving yards in that 2021 season. So he is absolutely, somebody who is going to make somebody's roster. And I think he proved that at the Senior Bowl. Now, The next guy I want to talk about is actually a wide receiver out of Stanford, Michael Wilson. Um, he kind of he kind of fits the bill of what's been coming out lately, like a Mike Evans light, a guy who's tall. He's 6'2", about 210 pounds, but he's fast. He's got a little bit of
Hey, it's Mike
explosion to
Evans.
him. Say what?
I just wouldn't say it's Mike Evans in
No,
Mike
no, no, no. Mike Evans light. Mike Evans light. So
Light,
he's
like a
got that.
Miller Light.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Bud Light, Miller Light. You know,
Just wanted to clarify that for the viewers. Okay.
yeah,
So he's
absolutely. I
like the
mean, so
Miller
he's
Light version. Okay, I got
ex he's the PBR of no, I'm just playing.
you.
But no, man, he looked really good though. You know what I mean? When we talk about guys who made a case for them to make a roster, because when you look at it, his injuries prevented him from playing a ton of games at Stanford. But um, again, this is a deep dive into who looked good at the Senior Bowl, and he really did. He caught 4 passes for 76 yards. He's got decent size. He can snatch the ball. I mean, at 6'2", 209, you that's the perfect size for me, in my opinion, for
Oh
an
yeah.
outside wide receiver.
Oh yeah.
You know, runs clean routes, can create separation. If he can stay healthy, I mean, I could see him being a solid wide receiver 3 for a team. When you think about the Bengals who are looking at trading T. Higgins, throwing a flyer at a guy in the fourth, fifth round or something like that, just to pick up a body who's similar in size, has some separation, and can go up and make contested catches. I'm not sure what the stats are for T. Higgins on contested catches, but when you throw the ball up, it's not 50-50 for him. So if he can be one of those guys and really just develop, maybe even put on a little bit of size to him, maybe to prevent some of the injuries, I think he has the ability, at least if he can stay healthy, to be a solid wide receiver 3.
No, I totally agree. Michael Wilson is actually someone I really liked, and and we discussed notes before the show, and if you didn't say him, that's somebody I was gonna say, because I mean he is someone who truly, like, if he would have stayed healthy, he's probably talked about amongst the top of the wide receiver class. Like, this is just
Yeah,
a guy. I think I was looking at it. I think in 3 years he's played maybe 10 games. Like,
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but every time he
it's
steps on
rough.
the field, he looks, man, like a
He
baller.
looks the part for
Yeah,
sure.
he looks like a baller. So like I hope he can stay healthy. And if he does, any team would be lucky to have him. Like, and as a Seahawks fan and even as a Saints fan, like, dependent Saints, you need to figure out your quarterback situation first. But Seahawks, Geno,
Derek Carr,
maybe, hopefully, we'll talk about that on
he just
another
got permission.
episode. Yeah, maybe we'll react to that on another episode if something happens by Tuesday, because that's the
Stay
deadline.
tuned.
Uh, but yeah, so we will see. But I really do like Michael Wilson just because he balled out, man. Every time and this is something else about, like, this class. This is looked at as a very good DB class, like cornerback
Yeah,
class. There's consistently, like, it's pretty, or consensus is the word I was looking for, that like there's possible 4 to 5 corners that could go in the first round. Michael,
absolutely.
all the guys there. I mean, Joey Porter wasn't there. Like, some of your real top guys weren't
The
there.
top tier guys weren't there, but
But
I
like
mean,
he was putting it on those corners.
he's
Like,
kind of getting those
Smith was
second
there.
tier cornerbacks, and he was still putting it on them.
Like, so Cam Smith is one of those first round talent guys that was there. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen him in a couple mocks and before, and we'll get into some mocks eventually, and like I said, some future episodes. But yeah, man, he's really awesome, and he's somebody that I really like. And I agree. He just needs to stay healthy, and he will
Yeah.
expedite his combine and his draft stock dramatically.
So he's a guy that I'm definitely watching, and I'm big on the receivers this year, especially at the Senior Bowl, man. And maybe because we always get excited. It's kind of the in between. We've got the Pro Bowl, we got the Super Bowl this weekend, but we got the Senior Bowl in between with the prospects ahead of the combine and the draft and everything. Just a little bit extra for us to get excited about. So two guys I'm going to hit quickly on. So first, I've got Tank Dell and Jaden Reed. To hit Tank Dell out of Houston, I mean, you were there. I only get to see the highlights, but I mean, the dude probably looked like the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl.
He
The
did.
only issue is dude's 5'7", 5'8", 165 pounds. But
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it. He caught a ball. I mean, flipped around, turned his hips, and caught it acrobatically between two DBs. I mean, he's got everything. He's got the mentality more than anything to go up and get it. Like when you see it anywhere in his area, his mindset is that's his ball, and I love that. His size may not translate to something that is going to unfortunately keep his career to be, to have the longevity of a larger wide receiver. But I mean, he's got elite quickness, elite explosion in and out of his cuts. I mean, he was kind of the darling of Senior Bowl wide receivers. Like I said, I wish I would have got to see it in person just to see how twitchy he was in and out of his breaks. But everything you see, the videos you watch, I mean, all he did was make plays.
Yeah, no, uh, I agree. And I would say it's funny that you said that you really like the wide receiver class because I would say it's a very polarizing class. Like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily as good as recent classes
Right.
where
I
last
think it lacks the top tier guys. Um,
there's a
you
lot.
know,
I agree. There's a lot of
but there's a
talent.
lot of solid talent.
Yeah,
There's a lot to work with, even if they're just playing a role.
right.
There's a lot to work with in those round 4, 5, 6, 7 that you can kind of like if you're already deep at wide receiver, I don't think you need to jump on, especially if you have remotely any larger reads than that. But you don't need to jump at a guy at the 1, 2, and 3. Outside of Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, I'm not really as high on. I mean, you can kind of fade out a little bit if it's not a top tier need to that third, fourth, fifth, sixth round.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I agree. I think when you're talking Tank Dell, I think you're maybe thinking a little bit more Tavon Austin, honestly. Like someone who, like Tavon Austin, I think in his earlier career had somewhat success as the slot,
Yeah,
was never really a guy, but made some success in special teams, returning kicks and punts. Made a lot of success actually. So and they did work some punts with Tank Dell, and I did get to
yeah,
see guy is very shifty, so he can move. I think
yeah,
he has that explosiveness to where he can be like a Tavon Austin, or maybe, give a little Saints reference again, a Deontay Hardy, who
yeah,
is that
absolutely.
very same comp, who's like 5'7", 180 pounds, but has made a name for himself as one of the best returners in the league. So
Absolutely. I think that's the floor for him. I just, when you watch him, and like I said, the mindset that he has, I think that is the floor for him, is to be a solid returner at worst.
yeah.
When you look at like the guys that came out with the Cavante Turpin and the Keyshawn Nixons that came out, Keyshawn Nixon's a little bit different. I don't think he's the burner that Tank Dell is, but I mean, when you look at the Cavante Turpin that for the Cowboys, I think he could have that type of presence. Maybe not in year 1, but in year 2 as he gets adjusted to the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. So, I mean, probably not someone who is a great fantasy asset, but more in real life. But
Oh yeah, absolutely.
who knows? I mean, depending on your leagues, if you get points for special teams, I know in our leagues we don't, but there are leagues out there like that. That could be a very valuable player for you to snag maybe out of the third or fourth round,
For
So
sure.
just somebody to keep in mind. So I know you said you had one more player, right?
My last one, and I won't spend an insane amount of time on this, but I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't talk about Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. 6'2", 196 pounds. We had him. Uh, he's making non-elite quarterbacks look solid, at least. You know what I mean? He had a slower 2022, only 55 catches, 636 yards, 5 touchdowns. 21 was really his breakout game. Where 13 games, he put up 59 catches for 1,026 yards at 17.4 yards per catch. Um, that'll work in the NFL. And when we talk about guys that are in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round, I actually think that he will make his way into round 3 by the time, as long as he has a decent combine, no injuries, all those caveats. But I definitely think that he's a guy who is going to rise throughout this year. One interesting stat, we actually talked about this before we started, with he's got an 80-inch wingspan. An 80-inch wingspan. That's
Yeah,
almost 7 feet. So
that's
he's a
crazy.
guy who's going to go and snatch the ball out of the air. And being a Packers fan, I am open to any kind of later round wide receiver that can go and snatch the ball out of the air. He's a pretty decent route runner as well. So, we'll see. Again, these are all guys that we've got on a list that we're just going to keep following. We don't get up here and just say it for any kind of old reason. We legitimately look at these guys, watch their tape, look at their stats, and actually make a decision on what we think and they could be. And these four guys that I personally mentioned, on top of the guys, of course, you got to mention your boy first, who would have been on my list had you not mentioned him. But
On everyone's list.
um,
If you're not part of the Tajee Spears fan club yet, something's
yeah,
wrong.
yeah, there's something wrong with you. You're late to the party.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the guys that I mean, I'm excited about. I definitely wanted to make sure we touched on all of them.
No, yeah, I mean, and just to kind of touch on what you said about Jaden Reed, I absolutely love that. Like 6'2", almost 7 foot wingspan. Like when
Yeah.
you deep threat, and I'm surprised you actually didn't mention this because this is something that we were talking about beforehand as well. Was that he ran 20 miles per hour.
Oh God, yeah, I can't believe I forgot that.
He was the fastest player at the Senior Bowl. And that's what Pad's on, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen. So even if he comes to the combine and say he doesn't run like the fastest 40 there, to me, the
I'll
20
take his
miles per
play
hour,
speed all day.
yes, I want the game speed. The fact that he is that quick, like explosive. And we do have some videos that we can release on Jaden Reed as well.
Yep.
Um,
Practice player of the week voted by the opposite DB. So
yeah, like
he's the truth.
he is someone that like I think he fits a little bit more of what you would want to see I mentioned Jonathan Mingo, someone who's real
Yep.
athletic, has a lot of speed, and I don't know if he's as big as Mingo is, but like he's
No,
a lot more
Mingo's a
refined.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Reed though, he has a lot more refined to his shot. Like he is a
Hmm.
great deep threat. Like don't get it twisted. He will burn you deep, but he could
Hmm.
also go up and snag it as well. Be a little maybe trying to think like as of right now, I would say he's probably like a day 2, day 3 pick. I think
Yep.
day 2 is maybe a little at best. I think he needs a better combine to push into that day 2 era. But
For sure.
yeah, I mean, I really like him as well. Definitely, like I said, like you said as well, like all these players, some of them, might be a little bit higher than others. Like Tajay Spears is probably a name that by the time you are actually drafting, you may have to get him in the second round.
I think he's a day two pick easily. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and even for just like non like real life football, like in fantasy, if he's a day 2 pick, man, he may be someone you have to take in the back end of your first round. Like because think of James Cook. James Cook was what you call it, a day 2 pick. He landed with the
Damian
Bills.
Pierce, baby.
Damian Pierce, like all those guys were first round picks. Or pretty much like James Cook, I've seen go in like the first round of a lot of like top 5 of some drafts. Like in the
Hmm.
draft I was in, he went 6, and I think another one he went like 7 or something like that. So like those are guys that
And to think that you scoffed at me taking Damian Pierce in the late first round in one of your
yeah,
drafts.
I did. So if we should have started this podcast a year ago, and look at you now, you could have had something to hold over me. Uh, to the viewers though, I did try to start this podcast last year, but someone is
Oh boy.
very slow minded, So we like to throw some friendly jabs. It's always friendly. You'll get the hang of that though. But
He's not my friend.
eh, yeah, more like a
Kind of sort of.
more like a professional acquaintance. Like I don't hate you. uh, but no, so some of these guys you really are gonna like. And to move on, we have one more thing that we're gonna really try to dive into really quickly, and then we're gonna give you some Super Bowl reactions. So we have our top 10 ranking. So we're not going to go into a lot of like depth and background. We may give you some like quick points of what we like about the player, but we're going to kind of make this really quick. And then we're going to kind of save the really in-depth part, like maybe even turn it into just a full-on mock draft video at another point. But for now, we're going to just kind of just give you some maybe some hot takes. At least one of us will, because he loves the hot takes. Uh,
Oh boy.
so I'm gonna just kind of run through mine for my rookie rankings. I have Bryce, and this is all, by the way, super flex, pretty much a standard for most dynasties, I think, at this point. But I have Bryce Young number one. So saying this, and this will probably take the most time, is the fact that depending on who you're picking, yes, if you're in a super flex league, I mean, depending on who's on your team, and if you're in a super flex league, you should not be taking Bijan Robertson 101. Running backs do just not last that long, guys. Like, as much as I love Bijan, like Saquon, look at him. He missed basically 2 years because of injuries. It's a hard, hard position to stay healthy at. And I mean, if you're in dynasty, you got to obviously take the long term, and you're starting two quarterbacks. Who's going to put up more consistent points than your quarterbacks? So you got to take Bryce Young if he's your QB1. And for me, he is my QB1. So I have Bryce Young, but then I do have Bijan Robinson, because just to give you guys, I do have 101 in one of my leagues, and I will be taking him in that Superflex league. But I also have Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. So clearly, like I said, situation, I do not need Bryce Young in that situation.
Yeah. So if you're comfortable at quarterback, like you are at the moment, which somehow you pulled Josh Allen out of your ass in that trade, but whatever. Sorry. I'm not salty.
He's a little salty.
A little bit.
But
By
number
the way,
three,
sorry, just got a notification. Your boy Gino just got comeback player of the year.
Gino, that's what I love to see. I want to sign up to like a 3-year deal and then like maybe not draft a QB early this year. I think he's earned that, but I want
I
to.
think you'll take CJ Stroud or Will Levis if you make it to you.
I'm not gonna. I will get into that in another video. I would love that, but we'll see. But CJ Stroud is my number 3 overall rookie. And right now, after him, I have Will Levis, but that one may change, honestly, because Will is kind of hot or cold. I love Will. You'll see that from this podcast. The more I get to talk about him, I absolutely love Will. But
Big, strong guy. Yeah.
we'll see. He had a lot of bad on tape this year, but last year, I mean, the year before that, he had a lot of great. Like
Yeah.
to me, he kind of reminds you very ergo Josh Allen, and I really hate to say that, but they are both really big physical guys. Will is also able to run like Josh is, and
Cut through the Seattle weather. Just saying.
they both lost a ton of weapons too, their senior years. Josh Allen, his was never really a truly accurate passer, but he did lose a ton of weapons his final year at Colorado. No, it was Wyoming he went to.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kentucky, he lost Wandell Robinson, and he also lost one other player that I'm blanking on right now. But he lost Wandell Robinson too. For you guys that may not know, had like 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns his senior year at Kentucky. So that's a big weapon to lose. But right now at number 5, after Will Levis, I have Jahmyr Gibbs, who I absolutely love, and he may be rising in my rankings. I just didn't get a chance to see him at the Senior Bowl, unfortunately. So we're going to see how he performs at the combine. But if he pushes in like that 4.3 range, like if he's as fast, he doesn't look like really fast on tape, but if he shows up
Right.
faster than he does on tape, man, like he's just gonna again skyrocket for me. Really
Mm-hmm.
love Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm trying to get him in as many leagues as I can. Uh,
Late first or early second,
no,
depending
no,
on
no.
where Bijan goes.
Oh, we're talking real life. Yeah, probably late
Real
first.
life, real life, real
Yeah,
life. Yeah, yeah,
late
yeah.
first, definitely. Probably, I think more likely early second because I think Bijan may be late first.
So to me, Jahmyr Gibbs could end up being. So you remember the Chiefs went up and got CEH, and
Mhm.
Jonathan Taylor was in the second round, right?
Yes.
So to me, depending on where Jahmyr Gibbs goes, I'm not saying he's Jonathan Taylor, but what I'm saying is he could have that good of an opportunity because he lasted so long somebody already jumped on Bijan. They're like, I'm not going to take another guy this early in the first round. But I think that the early mid second round is definitely where we could see Jahmyr Gibbs go, and I think that ends up making him better for it.
So this is something we've actually talked about a decent bit, and we'll definitely get into this more and more as draft season goes along. But I don't think Bajan's going to go that high. I really don't. I think just the way the NFL is nowadays, running like I mean Saquon going at 2 was even looked at as kind of crazy, if you kind of remember the storylines back then, because he was no doubt thought of as the best player in that draft, but people question on if you can really build a franchise around a running back.
But
And
I mean, this is the thing. Saquon. I mean, I'm a huge Saquon fan.
no,
He
I
was a top
agree.
three prospect of all time.
Oh, that's high. Okay. I don't
Prospect, prospect.
Okay, no, I mean, I would have to look at like past prospects to really think about that. But I mean, off the top of my head, sure. Like Andrew Luck, Saquon, maybe even Kyle Pitts in there. Jamar,
Strictly running back prospect is what I'm
oh,
saying.
strictly running back. Okay. But
Yeah,
yeah,
top
so
three, top five, AP. You know what I mean? All those type of guys.
yeah. But there's a lot that goes on with the running backs. And like I said, I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. I just don't know the way the running back situation is used now. And plus, you got to also think there's a lot of talent in free agency. Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison, Tony.
Broken leg.
Yeah, he's likely to get franchises, stay with Cowboys, but
Mm-hmm.
Alexander Madison still, there are other guys that I'm really just blanking on right now. But I think Dalvin Cook, no, Dalvin Cook isn't. There's one other really big.
No, he's.
But whatever. I don't have the names in front of me. I mean,
Oh, Josh Jacobs is a free agent.
Josh Jacobs, yeah, that's the other big name I was thinking of.
Now, imagine you let Josh Jacobs walk and you take Jahmyr Gibbs in the second round.
Yeah, I mean that could work. I think that would be great. But like I said, we just got to see. There's a little bit more, but I am very high on Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think he could definitely creep into that number 4 spot for me. And then number 6, I have Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is my wide receiver 1 in this class. And the reason for that is I'm just kind of trusting history, like, and you know this about me, Alex, is every time we kind of talk, I'm very big at looking at history, because you always try to tell me the Packers are going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. And what do I
Come
tell
on, man. It's emotional for me. All
you?
right.
Look
It's
at
wishful
history.
thinking.
Look at history. You've never drafted a wide receiver in the first round, so it's not going to happen. But you look at history of Ohio State right now, man, they have some incredible talent come through, not just at the wide receiver position, just in general. I mean, DBU, they have been killing it recently.
I
But
can't wait to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. next year.
I can't too. I really love him. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, the reason he's my number 1 wide receiver is just because looking back at last year, where Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jamison Williams were all taking in the top 12, this guy was better than all of them last year. I mean, no, to be fair, I haven't watched a ton of film on him this past year. I mean, on the very limited one that was there, but he was hurt a lot. I mean, that's why I haven't watched that much film on him this year. But what I watched last year was a guy that was truly dominant. Like I think in the Rose Bowl game, he had like 13 receptions for like 300 yards and like 3 touchdowns or something crazy. And I just
Mm-hmm.
because that's just kind of made its round on Twitter to try to remind you of what he can be. And I'm just like, yeah, man, you look back at his stats and you watch a little bit more of his film, you're like, this guy was dominant, and like I don't think you lose that dominance just like that.
But question, does it not worry you a little bit? I mean, so his slight dip in production, or maybe it wasn't
I
even
mean, it
a
was a massive,
slight dip in
yeah,
production, but
it was a massive
but
production. He went
does
from
that not
600 yards to like none.
so is that from Marvin Harrison Jr. emerging, or did he have a rough season?
So
You know what I mean? Like that's he makes me nervous.
that is a good question, and that's very possible. Maybe he just kind of took over, like
Yeah.
Marvin. Because I mean, I do believe, and we've talked about this plenty of times. I think Marvin may be better than all of them. Like like which is kind
It's
of
hard to argue against that at the moment.
yeah, like it's real crazy to say, but right now he just looks special, man. He looks like the
Mm-hmm.
next Jamar Chase, basically. Like,
100%.
but about Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm just really kind of betting on history. Like I said, and I'm not going to repeat myself again, but I'm just going to bet on that and hope that talent kind of speaks to itself and the fact that he was hurt this year, because we've seen kind of players not as perform as much that kind of broke out young to kind of, savor that, I guess, draft stock. Now, to be fair, that was before NIL deal came around. So players weren't actually able to make money off of.
Changes a lot of things.
Yeah, so I don't know. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a very polarizing player, but I love this kid. So just to kind of move on, because I stayed on him a little bit longer than I meant to. But number 7 is Anthony Richardson. So Anthony Richardson is another polarizing player, but I had to
Yeah.
put him at 7 just because the upside is so high, especially in Superflex. Now,
Elite arm, can run with the best of them. I mean,
I wouldn't say he has an elite arm. He has a very strong arm, though.
well, sorry, that's what I mean. He's got a
Yeah,
cannon. He can
yeah.
make the throws.
He has a cannon for an arm. So
Yeah.
I think he lacks the more, you know, precision and technical aspects that Lamar was able to do coming out of college, because that's the inevitable comparison is Lamar because he's just a freak athlete like Lamar is. But he's
What
just,
do we always talk about? We talk about, can he throw an out route?
yeah.
Can he place an out route?
And I don't know. I really don't. There are
That's the
times
hard
when you
part.
look at Anthony Richardson and he does perform, like throw some bullets in there, but then there are others and you're like, oh my gosh, like
You're like, oh man.
come on. So I think this is someone who could have 100% benefited from another year of college. He was a redshirt sophomore though, so
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. But I think in the right situation, maybe somewhere like he can sit for a year or two. Man,
That's what I would like for him for sure.
that's just gonna be instrumental for him. But at number 9, 8, 9, and 10, just to kind of shoot them out, I have Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Zach Charbonnet. So I like all 3 of those guys. They're kind of interchangeable to me at this point. You're just kind of throwing out your favorites, but I like Jordan Addison. I think he's very explosive. I don't know if he'll ever be a 1. Same with Quentin Johnson. He has all the athletic tools, but I don't know if he'll ever really be a 1. I worry about just the drops. It's very inconsistent play. There are times where he was completely taken out of games, so like I worry about that. And I will account maybe that is a little bit on Max Dugan, not to hate on Max Dugan, but he didn't look great at the Senior Bowl. And I don't know. Maybe he's not as good as we thought he was, but he was a Heisman finalist. So clearly he had a great season. Can't take that away from him. So
And of course, we'll get to my rankings in a minute, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think that Max Dugan having a rough Senior Bowl actually kind of pushes Quentin Johnson's stock up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
I'll let you
he
get into
made
that
it
a little bit
happen,
more.
you know?
Yeah, I'll let you get into that a little bit more once we get to your rankings. But yeah, I mean, after like with Zach Charbonnet, really all I can say about him is he is my RB3 right now. But to be fair, I don't know. Like I've watched limited film on him. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, but what I have seen, I like. So going into the season, my RB3 was Zach Evans. But he kind of got his job taken towards the end of the year, and that was partially because of injuries. So I'm still kind of intrigued, and I have my eye on Zach Evans. Because I think he is finally getting healthy, and I think he will be able to participate in the combine, thankfully. But he will be somebody that will be really interesting to see. And obviously, I already mentioned my love for Tajay Spears, but he's not in that top 10 level yet. But he may be able to shoot there. Who knows? We'll come back to it. But now your rankings are somewhat similar to mine, but you do have a little bit of a difference at certain spots. So why don't you go ahead and dive in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, like you said, generally speaking, our top 3 are the same, just in a slightly different order. Um, I'm a sucker for running back. So when it comes to Bijan Robinson, and again, same with you, I'm set. I have Justin Fields, and of course the boy Joe Burrow. Um, I'm not worried about quarterback in that league right now. So of course, if I had the 101, I'd be right there with you. I'd be taking Bijan Robinson. So for me, I'm looking at Bijan Robinson as my number one. Number two is, this is where we definitely differ, is I actually like CJ Stroud a lot. I think that his play in the college football playoffs really is what changed it for me. He's got the size, he's got the maturity. He tries not to run, and when they finally unleashed him, I mean, we saw that he can really move and also make all the throws. So that's why I've got him at number two over Bryce Young. For me, Bryce Young, I think if he was to go to a team like the Texans and get with D'Amico Ryans, as long as D'Amico Ryans can pull in the correct coach, whether that's offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, I
Yeah,
think that he becomes, yeah,
we were talking about that, like that's very big for him. Those defensive
yeah.
coordinators, defensive coaches, you need to have a big, great offensive mind in there.
Correct. And I think that Bryce Young definitely has the it factor. So I think ultimately maybe he becomes a better. So, like I was saying, just with Bryce Young, of course, we want to make sure that he gets the right coaches and everything in there with a defensive head coach now with D'Amico Ryans, which I think is a phenomenal hire. But I think that's the type of place that he needs to go. He needs to be in a dome. I mean, even the Lions would probably be a good fit for him. But again, with CJ Stroud, I just think I think he proved too much in the college football playoffs. I mean, he was just elite. So that's why I have CJ over Bryce Young. At number four, I got another quarterback. Keep in mind, we are talking about a super flex league for Dynasty. So I've got Will Levis at number four from Kentucky. Big, strong, fast. I, I think I really like your comparison to Josh Allen. I know it's easy just because they're big, strong, and fast and can run, but when you watch their game, you see some kind of careless mistakes at times, but you see the elite traits that you want to look for, and that's exactly why I like Will Levis. Number five, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs. We kind of touched on that with you, so I won't spend too much time on him, but he just looks like an elite running back. Not to excuse me, I should say a really good running back. Elite to me is Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley's, those types of
Yeah,
players. But
you try
I think in
not
the
to
right
put,
situation,
yeah, I was just you
yeah,
try not to put too lofty of expectations right away.
exactly. So I think he can be, depending on where he goes, he's going to be legit. Whereas Bijan, I don't think it matters anywhere he goes. He's just going to be a top tier running back. Um, so as we were talking about it, I actually kind of made a couple switches in my rankings because I had Quentin Johnston at number six, and you kind of swayed. I was already on the fence. You kind of swayed me towards putting Jackson Smith and Jigba at number six versus Quentin Johnson at number seven. Reason being, like you said, the Ohio State pedigree. He was elite there for a reason. The injuries are going to adjust how his stats look and everything. But when you look at him in his last fully healthy season, he was clearly an elite wide receiver. So I think anybody in that top 10 to 15 range is going to be stoked to have him on this team. Same thing with Quentin Johnston. I think I kind of mentioned it when you were going through your rankings. Max Dugan looked
Okay.
decent throughout the year. Yeah, he looked okay. Nobody's going to think of him as a top tier prospect with top tier traits. So the fact that he was able to have the season that he had with Max Dugan at quarterback, I mean, TCU just kind of they hit everything that they needed to do. So they had the type of year that was just like they got the major wins when they needed. Nobody really expected to see them in the beginning of the year in the college football playoffs and make it as far as they did, but I think in the end we saw who the best teams were, and it was a little off-putting to see that he had one catch for 3 yards in the championship. So that it hurt, but again, they just got trounced all the way through. So I don't know how much I can really put on that, especially with Max Dugan at your quarterback.
Yeah,
Um,
they just looked overmatched in general.
yeah, it was
That's what
embarrassing.
worries me. Even like when you look back at that game, like Eli Ricks was shutting him down, like just
Yeah.
completely took him out.
So, and the other thing is, I hope that his mentality is there, because in a game like that, it's easy to just check out. And I think overall, the TCU players ultimately just checked out. I mean, after like the first quarter, I mean, they basically were like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. So, one catch for 3 yards is really unacceptable, even against a team like Georgia. But next, I've got number 8. I've got Anthony Richardson. Again, it's just elite traits. That's really what it comes down to. And when we look at the Justin Fields types, not saying they're exact same player, but the elite athleticism, when it translates to fantasy, I mean, it's a cheat code. When you look at Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, I'm not saying he's on that type of level running and stuff like that. We'll see what he can do,
It just makes the path so much
but
easier.
it just makes it so much easier. Um, then number 9, I've got Zach Charbonnet. I think he just proved a lot. He reminds me. Oh shoot, I had the comparison earlier, and I'm blanking on him right now. Both played for the Cardinals. David Johnson, just a decent wide receiver, bigger guy. He's not going to shake you out of your shoes, but he's going to get you the tough yards. And then this is a little bit of a homer pick. Uh, and I say homer just because of all the mock drafts recently have put him to Green Bay, is Michael Mayer. Um, he can block because he's a big dude. I've seen a couple of plays where he's actually pulling around and blocking for his, I want to say his running back, wide receiver, whoever it was, but he blasted one of the DBs. And that's really what you want to be able to get your tight end to do. So if he can block, he's going to be on the field. If he's on the field, somebody's going to want to throw him passes. He's not a guy who is going to burn you like a Kyle Pitts. He's not going to shake you out of your shoes like Travis Kelce, but he's going to just get you the big plays. I kind of liken him to like a Pat Fryer move, where he's not going to, again, he's not the elite speed guy, shifty guy, but he just gets to the right space where you want him, and he can make catches. He's got a big radius. He's like 6'5", 250, 260 pounds, but can still move for a guy that size. So
Yeah,
that's why I've got him at number 10. Just a little shout out to tight ends. But yeah, that
great
rounds
tight
out my
end
top 10
class.
list. Yeah.
Yeah, really great tight end class. No, I mean, I really like Michael Mayer as well. We've talked a little bit about it, the tight ends, and we'll go in more depth position wise when we get to certain
Yeah.
episodes later on. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy I really like. Dalton Kincaid. Haven't had a chance to really dive into him yet, but I mean, I
Yeah.
also really like Darnell Washington. Like I mentioned him earlier in the podcast, where I would love the Seahawks to get him, or maybe even the Saints. Probably the best run blocker of the tight ends, but he's like, isn't he like 6'7" or something like that? And like,
Yeah. I mean, he's a mountain of a man, dude.
he's so big, man. Like
I
he
mean, he could probably put on 40, 50 pounds and play right tackle. I mean,
exactly
it's, yeah.
like if he just develops even slightly in the red zone, oh my, you're looking at possibly Antonio Gates, and
Yeah.
like I
It won't
really
even be fair.
yeah, like and just to get this out there, and I know we've done it a bunch already. I do hate throwing out those giant, elite comps like that, but it's just because it puts so
It's a
much.
piece. It's usually just a piece that just kind of reminds you when you watch him. You're like, oh man, he
Yeah,
could be at his ceiling. That, yeah,
exactly. Like
they are fun though when it comes around to draft season. Just be like, dude, he could be this.
the
It's
next
a lot of fun.
Antonio Gates, like
Right.
to be the guy that has Antonio Gates on your roster for the next 10 years you're in your dynasty league. I mean, that's what people thought they were getting with Kyle Pitts this year,
Yeah.
and hopefully that gets better because I have Kyle Pitts and I've
Right.
been denying trade requests for him left and right just because I know his has dropped significantly and I'm holding out. So for all
You
you
might as well at
Pitts,
this point. I mean, what you're going to get offered for him? Maybe I'll send you Greg Dulcich or something like that.
yeah, we'll see. But all you Kyle Pitts owners, y'all hold out. But no, I mean, so there's a lot of good things that you mentioned. Like I said, you had some pretty good things in there, and I really like the tight ends. This is probably one of the stronger tight end classes that we've had in a while. And then also the wide receivers, like I said, it's kind of polarizing. We don't know, some are better than others, but
Yeah, we'll see.
we'll see. The quarterback class really outside of your top four: Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, and Bryce Young. There's not really anyone else worth mentioning. I guess you do have your Hendon Hooker, who I like. I know you're not as big of a fan of, but I like him.
Mm-mm.
Like I think
I think he needs to go somewhere and sit for sure for a couple of
oh
years,
no,
but
for
I
sure.
think he becomes a serviceable quarterback. But I don't think he breaks the
I,
backup
I like
quarterback
him.
role.
I like Hendon. I don't know. I think if
Now,
you get him in the right situation, I mean, they're not saying that with any quarterback though, but if you get him in the
but
Seahawks,
he has the skills for sure.
or the Saints, yeah, somewhere where you got the weapons around him and you have the system that is thrive for quarterbacks to succeed. I can't really say that about the Saints anymore. Pete Carmichael, what are you doing? Uh,
Yeah, shout out Pete. Ugh.
and then
But
let's
think
not.
about it though. I sorry, not a huge fan of Hendon Hooker, but at the same time, when you think about the 49ers started four different quarterbacks this year, an elite backup or a solid, mature starting quarterback who's played for a big school and has been in big games, and the moment isn't just going to be too big for him. I mean, that's invaluable. I'm
Yeah,
sure that instead of Josh Johnson, they would have rather had a guy who's been in bigger games like that before. Um, but then again, there's also Brock Purdy. So, you never know what you're really going to get. And the wide receiver class, I think like we kind of mentioned, it lacks the top tier talent. But I think I think it's very possible that the best wide receiver in this class is none of the guys that we've mentioned. Well, excuse me, none of the guys that we've got listed in our top 10, I should say. I think it's very well possible. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba based on his year prior to this, but we just don't know. And Jordan Addison, I think, is the only notable guy that I left off of my list that you have on yours. Um, I just he's small, man, and that again, same thing with Tank. It the this how small he is really just bothers me. And he had Caleb Williams, and he's injury prone. It just I don't know.
yeah.
He just doesn't sit in the top 10 for me.
And last thing we'll say before we wrap up and get to our Super Bowl predictions is like those guys that kind of just, sneak in. And man, I had a brain fart. I just forgot who I wanted to say. Um, oh well, you'll save it for another episode. But we'll go ahead into the Super Bowl reaction. So obviously we have our Super Bowl reactions. Oh, I just remembered it came back. You'll
There we
laugh
go.
at us, obviously, in the audience will laugh at me.
He's he's from Hammond, but it's fine.
Wow, that's a low blow. I mean,
Sorry, love all you Hammond people. Please watch, like, subscribe, all that good
you
stuff.
realize there's more than one Hammond in the United States of America, idiot.
Yeah, but we're talking about Hammond, Louisiana,
Okay,
with the Saints behind you. Anyway,
all right. But the guy I was
wait. You dog Virginia Beach, where I'm from, all day, every day. And the moment I mention Hammond, you tighten up. I can't believe this. This is ridiculous.
because I'm not from Hammond, but whatever.
But I like to put it there
Our
for
viewers, our viewers do not care about Hammond, Louisiana.
you.
The guy.
New Orleans, Hammond, same thing.
Regain composure. Uh, uh, so the guy I was talking about though is Zay Flowers, and we actually just started
Ooh,
getting to him, and he's not in my top 10 right now, but he's a guy that could easily sneak in.
yeah,
Like by the end of the day, I mean, you watch his film and you're just like, wow, he's probably the only one of the wide receivers this year where you watch his film and you're like, wow, like this kid looks legit. And speaking of lofty expectations, I didn't even mention this, but I asked you who was the first player you thought of when I sent you Zay Flowers highlight tape, and you said Antonio Brown. And I
yep,
couldn't. And that's exactly who I was thinking. I was like, man,
yep.
Like it's hard not to see whenever you look at certain things and just certain traits. But he's another player. Definitely keep your eye on. Maybe he goes to a wide receiver team like the Giants or something like that. And I mean, I feel like that would be the perfect scenario for him.
Oh
Maybe
man.
a little bit of better quarterback, but Daniel Jones is definitely usable. So he can get him the.
And to piggyback on that, him and Jaden Reed seem like two players that the Pittsburgh Steelers grab in like the third round that all of a sudden take off like an Antonio Brown or like a George Pickens. I mean, we can go on and on, Chase Claypools and all that of the world that just end up being, whether they're just solid or end up being elite wide receivers. I mean, they're just not the biggest name guys that end up being great for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So definitely somebody to watch out for, especially now they traded away Chase Claypool, and Deontay's expensive and injury prone. So we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
they always seem to stack up on guys
They
like that.
do. So I mean, that's 100% possible. But he's definitely a name to keep out, and we'll continue to deep dive on all these things in the future episodes. Like
Absolutely.
we'll have some ranking shows come out. We'll maybe have a mock draft eventually once it gets a little closer to draft season. Or like,
And let us know what you want. I mean, if there's, whether it's Dynasty, Super Flex, or even I'm willing to get into IDP, redraft,
yeah,
um,
we'll get into
everything.
it
Just let
all.
us know what you want to see.
Guys, yeah, I mean, we talk about fantasy 24/7, just probably like you could, maybe not 24/7, but we talk about fantasy a lot, and we talk about not just football a lot, but sports. We'll talk about basketball. So, whatever you guys want, just let us know in the comments, like and subscribe. But before we do, go ahead and get out of here. We will give you our Super Bowl predictions because obviously, it's like the mecca of all sports. Like pretty
Yeah,
much I don't know
this
another
is the
maybe
pinnacle.
maybe
Yeah,
besides the World Cup that brings in more viewers, sports
I
wise.
mean, but even with the World Cup, who talks about the commercials the
Exactly.
way we talk about the Super Bowl commercials? I mean,
So
it's a family event. Even if you don't watch football,
Super
you
Bowl
watch the
parties,
Super
yeah.
Bowl.
Yeah, Super Bowl parties. It's a great time. I mean, you live in Virginia Beach, so unfortunately you will not be able to watch it with me, but I will be having a great time eating some really good seasoned food because that's something we know how to do down. uh, but
Yeah, my mom's from England, so I had to learn about seasonings. Anyway.
yeah, he's a fake Englishman, by the way. He's not real.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But we'll see.
Got a sleeve devoted to it, but it's fine. It's whatever.
We'll get into those Super Bowl reactions. I mean, Super Bowl predictions. And obviously, it's pretty much what most people expected going in. Maybe you could have said the 49ers going in because they did look just almost unstoppable at a certain point. But I think
Yeah.
me specifically, I'll throw
You're on
this.
your fourth string quarterback. It's rough.
Yeah, it's rough. But like me specifically, I had the Eagles in from the beginning of the playoffs. I just thought that they were the overall best team, and I don't know if you remember, but I threw that in our group chat in
Yeah,
the league as well. So I didn't have
absolutely.
I had Eagles versus Bills, but I think if I wasn't picking the Bills, it would have been the Chiefs. So but I'm gonna go Patrick Mahomes winning over the Eagles though. And I think it's gonna be a fairly low scoring game. It's good. There's going to be points scored, but for some two high powered offenses, people would probably expect maybe like a 40-point game or something like that. I think it's going to be more like 28-24, and who knows? Maybe the Chiefs stop like a last minute drive from the Eagles, or Patrick Mahomes goes on a game winning drives. But I think it's going to be a hard fought game, and I'm picking Chiefs 28-24.
Usually I love to play the contrarian and go against whatever it is that you say because you're usually wrong, except for in fantasy this year. So I'll give you that. But this time I think you're absolutely right.
Before you make your pick, we got some breaking news. Speaking of our Super Bowl reactions, Patrick Mahomes is your NFL MVP this year.
Yes,
Congratulations.
sir.
My dude is the
Absolutely.
he's just
Hey,
if
he's
he gets the Super Bowl this year, man, he might
yeah.
Maurice Jones-Drew called him the GOAT already. Like he may be. Like he really is. Like I don't
I
know.
think he's easily surpassed Marino and Rogers as the most talented thrower of the football of all time. Now, the greatest to me, it's going to take a lot more to get to Tom Brady. Um, so I think it's going to take a lot to get to Tom Brady. But man, I went and saw him play the Titans this year. I do a football trip with my friends, my older brother, every single year. And we went to Kansas City and watched him play the Titans in just an ugly slugfest type of a game. And he was able to pull it out, man. He's humble, but he gets guys going. I think he's an underrated runner of the football at the quarterback position. He's easily the best player in the league right now and has been for the last few years. So I'm taking the Chiefs. I think it's actually going to be. I think the Chiefs defense is a little bit underrated. But again, I don't see it being a barn burner. I don't see anybody going above 30 points, to be honest. And I could be wrong because they're, like you said, they're both high powered offenses. Um, the Eagles, man, they have the better overall team, but the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I mean, how do you go against that? It's like
The
in the
Wizards.
Avengers. Yeah, it's like the Avengers, man. And he's like, we have a Hulk.
I
We have a
love
we
that
have a Patrick Mahomes,
reference.
man.
Yes. We have
It's
a Patrick Mahomes. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Indeed.
I will be wearing my Patrick Mahomes jersey that I bought this year from the stadium. Dude, I'm so excited to watch the game. I got a couple of bets on it, but man, I think the Eagles make it close. So I'm going Chiefs 27-20.
Okay.
And I think that's a pretty solid bet.
Yeah, I like it. So we're both on the Chiefs, and I mean, I think if you're betting on the Chiefs, that's a pretty solid bet. It's like betting against Tom Brady. It's hard to do.
Right.
Like it really is. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think he is definitely past, like most talented quarterback
Oh
conversation.
yeah.
And he's entering, like, if he gets that second Super Bowl, I mean, shoot, like he may be another like GOAT. Like
Dude.
if not GOAT, he's in that top five, like no doubt. Like it's not even debatable anymore. Like he is a top
And
five greatest quarterback.
and what he's displayed to this point, he doesn't need to get 7 Super Bowls. He doesn't need to go to 10 to become the GOAT. I think if he was to get to 6, 7, 8 and win somewhere between four or five of them, with the talent that he's displayed, with that to his resume, add another MVP or two to his trophy case, I don't think there's any reason that he ends up not being the greatest player of all time.
I mean, this is year 7, correct? And he's already been to 3 Super Bowls.
Correct.
Yeah, so
And I
that's
and I
possible.
just want to give a quick shout out to Joe Burrow because that's my guy, not just in fantasy but in general. I think Joe Burrow is the Peyton Manning to Tom Brady. That he will be the same to Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that Josh Allen is his true rival. Josh Allen is a great story. Josh Allen could be Ben Roethlisberger to me. He could still be a Hall of Famer. But I think that the competition, his true rival is Joe Burrow.
Yeah. No, I mean, I
I
agree.
want to
I think you're looking at Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady part two. Like this
absolutely,
is the
absolutely,
new generation of that, and I couldn't agree more.
yeah,
But I'm excited. I am really excited for this Super Bowl. It's going to be a great one, I think. And we'll see how it turns out. There's a lot on the line. There's legacies, maybe, like builders for Jalen
yeah,
Hurts, even like Devontae Smith, who crazy stat would be the 4th player only in history to win a Heisman, a national championship, and a Super Bowl. I think the other ones
yeah, true.
all-time greats like Marcus Allen, no, was it Charles Woodson? Yeah, Charles Woodson.
Yep, Charles Woodson, who
Who's
is my favorite player of all time, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure. And
Hmm.
who's the other DB from Michigan that won the Heisman? I'm blanking on his name. You know who I'm talking about. He's a very well-known guy. I'm just blanking on his name. But that's fine. There's like four other.
Man,
You know who I'm talking about too.
yeah. Mhm.
It's fine. We're
Hey, look, as soon as we shut this off, we're gonna be like, "Oh my
Yep,
god,
that's
it
who it
was."
was.
Yeah,
But no, so any suggestions, guys? That's the end of the comments. I mean, the end of the comments. That's the end of the
in the
show.
comments.
Obviously, we had a lot of stumbles throughout this first show, but cut us some slack. It is our first one ever.
Hey, I
Uh,
I have no football stuff behind me. You've got Gino and the Saints. We'll look to get a little more production value, but
we'll get better.
at the end of the day, it's about the content. So
Yeah.
hopefully you liked what we provided for you, and we made you a little bit smarter today.
Yeah, we gave you some good knowledge, maybe give you a little tidbits, help you win some fantasy drafts and
Absolutely.
fantasy championships, win some money. So, yeah, I mean, before we go ahead, get off, guys, like I said, like and subscribe, leave a comment, let us know, obviously, if we suck, what we can get better at. And then if we do
Right.
suck, promise we'll be better. If you like and subscribe.
Listen, guys, at the end of the day, we're going to keep doing these. So you might as well help us get better. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
give us some of that good cheer. But we'll
absolutely.
go ahead and log off, guys. Go ahead, leave a comment. And till next time.
Yep. Matt, Alex, take it here.